I'm here to talk to you about why you get in a painful, stuck state in your relationship. So I'm a neuropsychologist and my work focuses on the relationship between your relationships, emotional pain, and your power. In other words, how do you get to the full expression of everything that you are capable of becoming in your relationship with yourself and in the relationship with people around you? So I think that the brain is the great clarifier. Okay. So oftentimes when we are in pain, it is a very confusing thing, right? So when you are stressed out, when you feel threatened, when you feel humiliated, when you feel unseen, when you feel demeaned, that is very triggering. And when you get triggered, you enter a very reflexive state. Okay. When we get triggered, when we become in this kind of emotionally dysregulated state, your brain can't figure things out. So when you are feeling frenzied or when you are feeling stressed, your problem solving plummets, your ability to think clearly plummets, your ability to emotionally regulate yourself drops. Okay. So how many times have we been in a calm state and said something we really regretted? Very few, but very frequently we are in an emotionally dysregulated state and we are doing things and saying things that we very quickly come to regret. So I like to simplify pain because I think what happens is when we are triggered, we get confused and we start to follow threads that actually have nothing to do with the core root. I call it the core pattern behind your pain. So I'm going to simplify pain in your relationships for you. There's really only two. In broad strokes, there's two forms of pain in your relationships. You have the pain of suffocation and you have the pain of abandonment. Obviously, if you are suffocated, if you are oppressed, that's horrible. Similarly, if you are left, if you are abandoned, if you are thrown out of the clan, also awful. But here is the craziest thing. The fear of suffocation and the fear of abandonment are simply extensions of very healthy, innate wirings of your brain. What do I mean by this? Well, the fear of suffocation, so in other words, why would the brain be bothered if you were suffocated? Well, because your brain is also absolutely wired for independence and autonomy. Okay, so at a very young age in our development, the human being wants what the human being wants, right? So there is an innate need for self-expression and freedom and the ability to choose and live our life the way we want to live our life. Alternatively, what would make being abandoned? What would make being emotionally abandoned so emotionally provocative to the brain? Well, it's because at the exact same time that you are wired for independence and autonomy, you are simultaneously wired for deep dependence and deep interconnectivity. Okay? So this tension, right? To the brain, I call it a transrational thing. And sometimes it's it can be a real SOB because you're like, I want both independence and I want autonomy. I want safety and I want freedom. Okay? So that tension can create a lot of pain. So I want to kind of just give you an example so you can see how the rubber hits the road on this. I'll pick one. So imagine that I grew up in a family that the boundaries in the family suffocated me. So oftentimes, I would say overwhelmingly, our parents are trying to do the best that they could do with the resources and the knowledge they had at the time. So, and now we're getting into kind of this idea of the intergenerational transmission of pain, the intergenerational transmission of trauma. But imagine I grew up in a household where there's a lot of untreated mental illness and there's a lot of marital conflict between my parents. So my mother, let's say my father's very mentally ill. So he's not available. He's not responsible. He's not doing the things that she thinks he should be able to do in the family. And so my mother relies on young me. Let's say I'm 6, 7, 8, 9 years old to basically be this kind of surrogate spouse. So she talks to me about, how she's so disappointed in my father. She asks me to kind of function like a surrogate parent and take care of my younger siblings. She asks me to cut the grass and mow and take out the trash, and not just occasionally, but this is kind of a repeated boundary violation. My father, on the other hand, is always telling me how special I am, how he's so glad he can confide in me. how he could never talk this way to my mother, how he doesn't know what he would do if he didn't have me. Okay. This creates two main things that will then complicate and cause a lot of pain in my relationships as an adult. First of all, I am gifted the gift of specialness, but turns out it is not much of a gift at all. So I learned very early that because I'm having, and I don't really have a lot of this is unconscious. I don't have the words or the understanding of it, that I am special. Okay. That no one could really do what I could do, that I am pulling off Herculean feats as a 6-year-old that my grown mother isn't able to pull off, right? So if I'm 6 and being told like, I could never talk to your mother like this, what do you think that does to the brain of the child, right? So then when I get in relationships at work, with lovers, with having children, I feel like no one can really hold just how special I am. And so it contributes to this profile of grandiosity, right? The problem with grandiosity is it's never because the person actually feels so great about themselves. It's because the person has a core emptiness inside of them because they weren't able to have their emotional needs developmentally met at appropriate times. And so there's this emptiness that they can't get to, and because they can't get to, they can't let anybody else get to it. The other main pain that would arise in this situation if I grew up in a suffocating family is I feel suffocated. So when it's time for me to choose a partner, I never, ever, ever choose my partner with 100% consciousness. I am choosing my long-term romantic partner to finish my unfinished childhood business. This is true across the board. So I wisely, and I'm not saying that sarcastically, choose a man, for example, who is happy to let me be as independent as I want to be. So I can do what I want to do. I'm kind of in charge of the house. I'm the one kind of making decisions for the family. He's very flexible. He's very accommodating. So at the beginning, this works wonderfully. I feel so where my childhood stripped from me that right to freedom, that right to autonomy, that right to expression, that right to be left alone sometimes. My partner now gives that to me. Well, this only lasts for a certain period of time because your brain is most fundamentally a pattern detector. Your brain is most fundamentally in the business of not getting you happy, not getting you stress-free, not getting you healthy, not getting you wealthy. It is in the business of getting you familiar. So pretty soon I'm like, my family of origin told me what love feels like. And now, instead of feeling suffocated, I feel abandoned. Why aren't you coming after me? Why aren't you telling me how great I am? Why aren't you asking me for advice? Why don't you care that I'm not checking in with you? Why aren't you suffocating me? Okay. Another thing that can happen to kids who grew up in families that had more of the suffocation model is when they go on to have their own children, this can be very traumatic. Because now they find the needs of the infant child oppressive. And this makes sense because how can I give to you this parental energy when that was already taken from me in my own childhood? I already did my parenting. I already responded to people's needs. I already, when people asked me to step beyond my capabilities, when people asked me to be more emotionally intelligent than I could, when people asked me to put aside my own needs, when people asked me to put aside my own preferences, I did it willingly. You should really only have to do that one time in your life for the birthing and the raising of your own children. So a lot of times parentified children are like, I already gave my parenting, except I gave it to my own parents and not to my children. This can create a lot of pain too. Okay. Let me take it home for you and end this video. We can talk more later. It's that if you don't understand the true core of the pain, the pattern of the pain, you will seek solutions that will not relieve your pain. You'll think, oh, you know what I need to do? I need to get divorced because this this guy, this woman, this partner, it's not really working for me, right? And this external thing is the problem. Okay, my friends aren't telling me how special I am. My friends aren't telling me how great I am. I need new friends. They're just jealous. They're not paying enough attention to me, and on and on and on, right? Until I figure, a lot of times I work with people who, having kids is incredibly stressful. That's universally true. But it's one thing to be moderately stressed out, and it's another thing to be wrecked by the raising of your kids. And so I think a lot of times parents who don't do the internal pattern work are putting things on their children. Again, there's that idea of the intergenerational transmission of pain and the intergenerational transmission of trauma that has very little to do with those children and has everything to do with their core wound, their mother wound. So in order to get back to the mothership on this great journey home to your true source of power, you need to understand your core patterns of pain. And if you work on the wrong thing, it is like working on the shingles of your house when the problem is in the foundation. I hope this is helpful to you. Thanks so much.